that this is a brand, as he mentioned, that's founded by one of my favorite celebrity couples, of course, Russell Wilson and Ciara, combining two of my favorite things, fashion, philanthropy, and it's also Black owned. So before we get right into it, I want to cut to a quick brand video that kind of gives us a little feel and a vibe of what House of LR&C is all about.
In this house, we welcome the dynamic thinkers
who move purposely with each and every footstep.
When others try to limit us to a box,
we showcase our many multitudes.
Our many multitudes.
Our many multitudes.
We define ourselves as venturesome,
as blossoming seeds becoming forests,
with our roots always reminding us where we began.
In this house,
the weight of our voices shift the narrative.
Our impact doesn't fade out of the picture.
When we unify,
it's a rallying call that transcends generations.
A beckoning wave of positive change drowning out the cynicism.
In this house,
we adorn ourselves in resilience
and hold the utmost respect
for each other.
Here,
we're building a new generation,
which celebrates the inclusivity of all.
It begins with one.
It begins with one.
It begins with you.
It begins with you.
At the House of Love, Respect, and Care.
I feel like I need that start to every week, maybe every day.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
It's a great start to the day. And that was put together by an author, spoken word poet, whose name is Jamal Parker. And when we were launching the House of LR&C, we said, how do we launch it in a different way to really get to the core of what we're about, which is bringing something different, like really going to that purpose-led. And, you know, of course, we're creating beautiful fashion, and we will get into what all of that is. But it's really about, I think it was what the world needs, right? We need to sort of be uplifted. We need to rise up. We need to feel good about the kinds of things that we're doing. So I can't wait to get into that with you on this talk today.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this was a brand, and it's actually a company of brands, right, that launched during a global pandemic. But I want to say it not even in the most relevant way possible, but in the most necessary, I think, means possible, with only, you know, more legs to go as far as like its future growth and possibilities there. Can you tell us about the brand? Brands again, and then what are we trying to do as far as reaching your consumers with this apparel vertical?
Sure. So I think, you know, it's called the House of LR&C, which is this idea of a house of brands. So, you know, we kind of liken that to a family. Within a family, you hold a certain set of values as your family, right? You have the same last name typically, or a couple of them. And at that level, you've decided, like, this is who we are as a family, and you know somebody belongs to that family because they share those values. And our values are love, respect, and care. But each of the children in the family brings a unique energy. So the children in our family are our three brands. There's a men's brand called Good Man Brand, which Russell actually developed with some partners in 2016. And then we have the Human Nation brand, which is a Gen Z focused brand. And then we've got something really exciting, which I'm not going to spill the beans yet on the word or on the name of, but that's coming soon. And I'm sure you can all figure out what that brand is going to represent, with an iconic fashionista like Ciara as one of our founders. The company itself kind of came together as when we looked at the space and we said, you know, in the world of fashion or in the world of retail, you have sort of the iconic brands. Lululemon. I mean, a lot of us come from Lululemon, right? So a brand that has an excellent business model in a white space, really addressing a need. Then you've got celebrity brands, right? So that really builds into, you know, people have had success. They want to translate that into some of their other passions. Then you've got sustainable brands, you know, the wonderful brands like Allbirds and Patagonia and folks like that are really focused on that element of things. And then really community based. So like a Glossier, for example, right? We work with our community, and we said, what if you took the best of all of those? What if you combine those things with sort of a passion for fashion, a desire to give back, creating with your community and having sustainability, and created a brand like that? And that's the House of LR&C. That's what we're really trying to do, is say there's room for all of those things. So we believe that You shouldn't have to give up on sustainability in order to be fashionable, and you shouldn't have to give up on fashion in order to be sustainable. And you want to create with your community as you go. So that's kind of the way we put it together. We give 3% of net revenues to the Why Not Youth Foundation. So no matter where you're buying in the house, we are then contributing to people that next generation, creating the leaders of tomorrow.
I love that. Typically, when we hear about celebrity brands that emerge, they typically come from some sort of like passion that the person might have, or maybe background or experience that they also have. It seems like in this case, it was a combination of probably that, and also a lot of research that was done in this space, and sort of like the opportunities that there are as it relates to apparel for all types of consumers, now as we continue to evolve and become more diverse. What is that? How important was that research component, and what were some of the insights that you guys were finding?
Super important. And as you say, they come from a place. So in our case, it comes from retail experts who have the ability in this business, in the house of LR&C, to kind of do the best do-over, right? So we've all worked in retail. We all, had amazing experiences. I have so much respect for the companies that I have worked for in the past. And in each one of those, you were like, oh, I wish we could do more of. I wish we could do a little bit of this. So we bring that element to it, right? We bring the amazing expertise of Christine Day, the former CEO of Lululemon, who, created an amazing business there. Then you bring what Sierra and Russell call is their passion for fashion, right? So they bring that, but equally is a passion for impact, a passion for giving back. So, Russell created Good Man brand in 2016. And from the get-go said, I need this to be more than fashion. I need there to be something else. So from the very first, they created this 3% give back. And then, obviously, we are not a nonprofit organization. So people have to buy into loving the product. So equally important is creating a product that leans into white space. So for him, he talks about he calls it the mid-range game. So he said, a guy in a suit, no problem, he looks fantastic. A guy in his gym shorts, again, looks fantastic. It's that mid-range game really you want to work on. So he looked at that and together with partners did the research and said there's a real opportunity in the market here. So that was the research that went behind Good Man brand. In Human Nation, that's a Gen Z based brand. It's that really interesting combination of purpose-led, wanting to speak to a community. We heard Jamal and his really powerful words. It's about the clothes, but it's really about what are you saying by wearing those clothes. So that's a business where we know that audience really cares about sustainability. The entire line is 100% organic cotton, recycled polyester. You don't have to wash it very often. So as a consumer, you can participate in sustainability. So that was the great research there, combined with ongoing research. So we do real-time work with a proprietary group of about 500 people that we check in with. We jokingly say, none of us are Gen Z. So we're like, well, if we're creating product for Gen Z, we should maybe ask them what they want. What sayings do you want us to put on a t-shirt? What colors works best for you? Do you care about hang tags, or would you rather not see them? And we get real-time feedback from them through talk, text, and video through a company called Rival. We can get it in 72 hours. So we're creating what they desire. And that helps also from sustainability point of view, because you don't create and then hope and end up with a lot of waste. So the research was not only done at the outset, it's really done on an ongoing basis in real time to make sure we're creating what they want.
I love that. I mean, more often, can we please ask for more brands to just talk to that audience? Just go ahead. Assumptions are one thing, but being able to streamline a process like that sounds like it'll just be really informative. Again, not just now, but for years to come. Tell me a little bit more about, I know you cover off sustainability, but definitely has some impact on the creative side of things too. And sort of like the messaging that you guys are putting out on a marketing side. A lot of brands even today are leading with some more sustainability messaging versus like buy this product now. Can you tell us about that creative marketing process and communication strategy that you guys are working on?
Absolutely. And I think, sustainability is a big buzzword now. And what we have to be careful of is, unfortunately, it gets into, the area of greenwashing, or people now even refer to it as like fake news, right? So you want to slap the sustainability label on so that you're feeding into that desire. But very quickly, the consumer becomes savvy and says, what's real and what is it that people are trying to use? What's become very performative here in terms of just using these words to sort of clickbait almost and get the person in. We took the approach of, we have the advantage of a startup company to be able to build it in from the beginning. There's a lot of companies doing a lot of great things in there out there in sustainability. For bigger brands that have already been established, that's very hard work because they have to go back and retrofit. We were able from the very beginning to say, we're going to establish as a public benefits corp. That means we have a triple bottom line. It's our charter. We have to respect a triple bottom line of people, planet, and profits. So the next thing we did is we said, we're going to become a B Corp. And the B Corp is a 300 question assessment of your business across all areas, the communities that you're in, the way you govern the company. Again, making sure that you are satisfying the requirements to be a company that respects people, planet, and profit. So, and then we looked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals and said, which of these goals do we ladder up to? So we want to make sure that our sustainable initiatives are not what we define it to be, but what it's been defined as by the experts. And then the trick is for our consumers is to make that understandable. Not everybody has a degree in sustainability that's going to be buying our product, and nor do they need to. So we've said, what are the very simple and clear messages that we can deliver to the consumer so they understand if you care about these things, we're going to give you the information so you're in choice to say, this is what I believe in, I understand what they're doing, and I want to vote with my dollars and proudly wear that product to show that I'm contributing.
I love that. It's, again, something that seems to be a fabric of the brand from jump instead of just like a seasonal, month-long giveaway, which we appreciate out of brands, but to have it embedded in the fabric of your DNA, it's just really important. Talk to me a little bit about the role of social and digital. I'm sure that's very much so important for the Gen Z, well, all brands, but specifically for that one. Are you guys leaning into that as an avenue, like a primary avenue for any of your marketing or communications efforts? What other platforms or stream channels make the most sense for you guys right now?
Yeah, and I think one of the wonderful things about having a house of brands is different channels work better with different audiences, right? So for what works for Good Man Brand is not necessarily going to work for Human Nation. The interesting thing is from a sustainability perspective, we know that actually every age group cares about the planet. I mean, ultimately, we want to, whether you care about it because you have children, they're going to grow up in it, or you're in that kind of, you're a younger person yourself. It is something that is ubiquitous. What is different is the desire of people to put their money behind that. So what we see increasingly happen is with younger people, they're more willing to say, I care about sustainability and I'm willing to pay for that. They also are, quite honestly, very savvy. The thing with digital and social is it's very easy to find out the information. And so we are very careful about making sure that claims that we're making, we can back up. And we want to be able to talk about them on social and digital channels. But we also have to balance that with fashion, right? I mean, we're not Greenpeace, right? So that's not our primary message. Our primary message is, here's something for you to help express yourself with through your clothing. And you're also able to make these statements through it. So you'll see on our channels that we balance those two messages. So, here, for example, in Human Nation, here's a great hoodie and pair of sweatpants you can wear. And not only do they look great and they're cool and they're a great design and they'll perform well for you, they're organic cotton, they're recycled polyester, and they actually have a treatment to them that makes them water and stain resistant. So you as a consumer can participate with us in washing less. And that means that we're bringing the consumer along in that journey, which I think is also a wonderful thing about what happens in social is it's social. Like the very definition is it's a come along. It's not a broadcast, it's a conversation. So we're saying, here's the conversation that we're having with you. Here's what we're telling you you can do. Now you can be part of this community by participating. In buying this product, you're going to wash it a lot less than you would something else. And you're going to really help contribute to a better environment going forward.
That kind of leads me to, I love that statement. It kind of brings me to my next statement and thinking about social being, you're having a conversation with your audience, meaning when you're planning certain messaging or key things to go out, it's not so much, we're looking years ahead, we might be, but we're really also responding pretty quickly to what's going on out there. To the point of creating product. Tell us about that process, because I know that that's something that you guys have a very unique perspective on when it comes to putting new product out.
Absolutely. So, again, with this group, it's through a company called Rival. And we have this proprietary group that we go to. So we can go to that group and say, within 72 hours, hey, we're going to put out a t-shirt that has a saying on it. Do you think it should say this or that? Or do you think it should say something else entirely different? And they can vote up what they want. And then we actually produce with that on it. Rather than us coming up with something and then finding, oh, it didn't quite hit the mark. The other thing we can do with print, which is, things like prints and sayings and those sorts of things, they have to be very relevant. And if you're doing them too far out, 9 months, a year ahead of time, you can often miss the mark. So we do that. We bring that process closer to market. We can go out and then react to what's happening and produce, again, this product that has all of the elements that we want. So again, the really sustainable elements of organic cotton and recycled polyester, and this great treatment, the wash less treatment, but also the message that's being portrayed is then very much of the moment. And that's a really key thing to do. Again, reduces waste, right? So as a clothing brand, the number one way to be sustainable is to not create additional waste stream. I mean, there's incredible data around how much waste there is. A garbage truck full of clothes is destroyed every second, right? I mean, we want to stay out of that and find ways to have these clothes be loved for a long time, and also make sure that we're not creating what is not desired, so we don't end up with waste.
Awesome. And speaking of loving clothes, I know the last session they mentioned a couple of trends in like the denim space, how denim is like a forever sort of fabric that will, continue to always be around for all ages. Are there any trends or things that you're looking at the House of LR&C that continue to be sort of like a favorite in the consumer voice? If I could guess, I would say if I want my clothes to be sustainable and soft and reusable for sure for years to come. What are you guys seeing on your end?
I think what is consistent through all of our brands, the two that we have and the one to come, is this idea of comfort innovation. So you want to be comfortable in your clothes, and through COVID, while everybody's at home, we see that, right? Everybody with the the 100%. Nice top on and probably sweatpants.
Sweatpants.
But that idea of comfort innovation, it was happening already, right? People were moving from sort of suits and buttoned up and more uncomfortable clothes to something where not only do I want to actually look good in my clothes, I want to feel good in my clothes. And that's, a lot of trends we're seeing, right? I come from Lulu, where of course we did a lot of that, right? We moved into that comfort, and we took sort of sport and how you make it wearable out beyond sport. Yeah. We actually now, I think, how do you have clothes that you can feel sharp in, you can express yourself in, you can feel fashionable in, but also comfortable. And then the piece, of course, for innovation. And one of the things that comes up is, and it's a very interesting from the sustainable point of view, is because if sometimes you have to mix some things in order to have a product that performs in the way that you want to. So that's always part of our challenge, to say, if you had a fully natural product and didn't maybe incorporate any of the more synthetics, are you going to have something that lasts as long and that people want to wear and feel comfortable in, and also has that shape that they like? So those are all the challenges that we have to balance in order to create a sustainable, comfortable, fashionable line.
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we get into some audience questions, and I know Brand Innovators audience, if you have any questions, go ahead and shoot them into the chat box right there. There's a couple flowing in already. I want to ask a little bit about you. I want to know a bit more about your personal experience. How do you think that has your experience at Lululemon and at previous roles? How has that kind of led you to sort of thrive in this role so far, House of LR&C?
I have the strangest background to be in this business, in the world of apparel. My background is actually primarily science. So the first sort of 13 to 15 years of my career was spent in biotechnology. and working in biotechnology as a scientist, but understanding how to communicate what needed to be communicated about the business. Biotech is a highly regulated industry. So when, you have to be absolutely spot on with what you're putting into a therapeutic that eventually is going to go into a human body. So I went from this very regulated industry. I spent a little bit of time post Lululemon in food. So food also has some regulations, ingredient labels and things like that. And what we did see in food was a similar thing where everybody put natural, like that's the label everybody slapped on it. A little bit what you see happening now with sustainability. And I think where we're going in the fashion industry is where our consumers are going to require that we are more transparent about what is actually happening, how their clothes are made, who is making them, what they're made of, and what's going to happen with them down the road. So, we're not at the point of a nutrition label yet or a content label. We do have some contents, but it's not to the same extreme. We have the technology now to be able to, using QR codes and something we use called a flow code, where you can tell stories through the clothing. You can answer the questions that consumers have at the point of the product. And so it's interesting for me, that path of like highly regulated to less regulated, but also seeing that there's a lot of parallels occurring through those different sectors, those different industries, where consumers of anything, whether it's a drug, whether it's food, and whether it's clothes, they want to know what they're buying, and they want to know the story behind it, and they want to be able to verify it themselves. So I'm really excited that we're coming to that, because I think it satisfies that need and brings you closer to your customer at the end of the day.
I mean, you're answering almost, you touched on a question that the audience has, and asking about what innovations and technologies are helping you, and what are you guys using that have helped you execute some of these strategies, and have they changed, and are they evolving over time? Can you speak a little bit to any of that?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things that have changed over time in the apparel industry. And it's in some ways it's back to what it was, right? So it started out as like an atelier, and you would go in to have your clothes made by somebody that you knew, and they would produce it just for you, right? So that's one of the things, is that we've gone through these phases of mass production, right? Where, unfortunately through fast fashion, right? They want to be really quick from runway. And so there's fast fashion that goes out, but that's volume. And that's actually been a very terrible thing in terms of the waste that's created. So one of the things that you see is getting closer to market, being able to turn quicker. So what I talked about earlier with bringing in the product and then printing it maybe in the US so that you're closer to market. That's one thing. The other thing is this idea, we call it your clothes are talking to you. So by things like QR codes, we use a flow code. We work with a company called DTX on the flow code. We have actually on some of our products, we have a compostable label that has on it a QR code. And if you scan that code, you can find out, where the product came from. You can find out stories about the factory potentially. You can find out what goes with it. You could get styling information. So instead of having to, go and search and whatever, you're bringing those two things together, and it literally allows you to talk through your clothes. We can continue to talk to our customers. Ultimately, we'll put those on labels. So instead of it being a care and content label, you'll have a label that has a QR code on it, or a flow code, as we call it. And through that, find out a rich and robust set of information about that product. It might be you want to know what you should style with it. It might be that you want to know where it came from, where it might go, how you could repair it, all those kinds of things you can work in. And that's really exciting to see that technology coming together.
Absolutely. And sort of a follow-up to that would be, how are you determining where to even spend the most of your time on some of these emerging technologies? Like, how do you figure out what to prioritize and what comes next, when it relates to some of these technologies that you guys are leveraging?
Well, that's the advantage and disadvantage of being a startup and a small company, right? You only have so many resources, money, time, and people. And so you have to really remember the why. And our why is this white space of fashion meets sustainability that is accessible. So, making sure that it's not just, and I don't want to say not just, because I'm appreciative of anybody that is taking an effort to make fashion more accessible, but it does tend to sometimes be a little more expensive, or it's kept very plain in order to be able to satisfy the sustainable requirement, but then you start to look like the martyr for sustainability. So our number one thing is, how do we make it so that you're not having to choose? You're not saying, I'm going to give up on fashion in order to be sustainable. So that's our North Star. That's what we focus on 100%. And we talk about this, love, respect, and care is very important in our company. It's the name of our company. It's the values we live by. And we think of it as love, respect, and care for people and the planet. So how do we think about what we're doing as a business? A real priority is making sure it's a great place to work. It's great throughout the value chain for people that are making the clothes, designing the clothes, all the way through the product life cycle, and also love the planet, right? Respect and care for our planet. So how do we do things that have the least amount of impact possible? So, it's this dichotomy around impact. It's really big impact on people, the people involved, and also those people who aren't in the commercial discussion. So those people that we want to help outside. That's why we give that 3% donation. And then reducing impact on the planet, so we leave a better world for those that are coming next. So the way we spend is related to, again, that North Star of understanding how do we best get people involved in that discussion internally, as well as all of our consumers.
Yeah, it sounds like constant, listening, understanding, sort of like digesting and being able to kind of take risks. So maybe a little bit in the direction that you want to go. Another question is, how can marketing and technology leaders structure their teams and recruit highly coveted talent for a new era that demands such an increasing array of like new skills? And that's probably hard and soft skills for the most part. How can they structure their teams and recruit better?
Well, I mean, and I come from a different perspective, right? Because I come more from sustainability than marketing, but I do think there's parallels there. I mean, even my background before that was also in communications. I think what's really interesting is integrating those functions into the business. So one of the things I've seen in my career is you tend to have, as you grow, you develop these, call it silos, right? You have the marketing department, the sustainability department, the merchandising department, whatever else. What we are doing as a smaller organization is embedding it all into the work. So integrating that across the organization. So marketing and sustainability with merchandising. I mean, when I think about it, even our sustainability team, it's not a team, it's not a separate function. It's how do we integrate that so that at the level of design, our designers are thinking about not only how do I make it beautiful, but how do I make it sustainable? They don't think I'm going to make this beautiful product and then the second foot is now how do I make it? It's this combined approach. Same with marketing. When we think about how we want to get our messages out, how do we do that in a sustainable way? Well, a flow code is inherently sustainable. You're not producing a bunch of paper and hang tags and things like that. So the integration, I think, of the functions results in an opportunity to attract talent that gets to see how their work directly impacts the business. And that's, I think, a way of creating a business where everybody is focused on the same thing, and you don't have some of the tensions that can exist in a business where people are, working for their own budgets rather than working for the org. So I love to see them integrated, and I think that's a great strategy. It's sort of having jobs big enough for people is one of the things we like to say. So you really understand how you contribute.
That's a tweetable moment, having jobs big enough for people. I love that. And it sounds like you're also—
that one from Christine Day. I'll give her full credit.
Oh, well, thank you, Christine, for that. It also just sounds like you're creating a space for people to just be, even better in their next role, beyond that. It sounds like you're creating a function or allowing them to experience different things for them to just have a ton of experience and growth in a really awesome way and positive way.
Yeah, I mean, there's another tweetable thing, right? We define leadership as like creating the space for others to perform.
Yeah.
So you create an environment where people can absolutely be their best. They can understand not only what they need to do, but how that impacts, somebody who works alongside them and how that has an impact on the overall business. And in a small business, you absolutely have the ability to do that. That gets harder and harder as the business grows. But if you create it that way at the beginning, then you end up with this integrated business where everybody is really striving towards the same thing and has a very rich environment for their own workspace.
Right. I love that. So to flip it on a little bit to some of my questions, curious to know what success looks like then. If, I mean, truly innovative company, truly there's, a lot of awesome, backing to the company. What does success look like moving forward in this next year?
I think we celebrate success in a lot of ways. The how happy people are in the organization, right? That's, our number one, because we have this structure, the charter in which we've been created under the Public Benefits Corp and the B Corp. Part of our success is across all those metrics. How are your own people doing? How are the people doing that you work with? Are you being successful there? So we actually have an external metric where we'll look to improve our scores on those things year after year. I think the other thing we have, because we're a highly impactful organization, is when we give this 3%, we give it to the Why Not You Foundation, and then we follow very closely how those programs are successful. So one of them is through an organization called Friends of the Children that follows kids in the foster system for 12 years with a mentor. And we really provide a lot of funding for that program. And through that, we get to see how those kids do. So do they have greater rates of graduation from, high school? Are we seeing, more of them become engaged in the workforce and achieve success in their own lives? So, 3% is a lot. 3% of net revenue is a lot to give. So we also are really wanting to make sure that that money goes to a good place. I mean, as a commercial organization, of course, you always have your sales, right? So that also tells us, but we sort of talk about it being impact is actually our goal and revenue is the result of that.
I love to hear it. Someone saying you have an excellent business model. I love this. Another question from the audience is, how have you shifted your data strategy in the past few months, if at all? Have you shifted your data strategy?
We're actually becoming involved more in that as we go forward. So, I mean, realistically, we Goodman brand is a fantastic brand. We have that with Nordstrom. It was probably 98% sold at Nordstrom until 12 months ago, and we've really developed DTC around that as well. And so we're, gathering more data on that. Human Nation is just a baby. It was just sort of launched in January, so it's pretty new, and we'll be gathering information on that. We are going to work with a second-party data source to make sure we have that 360 view of the customer, and we can think about and meet them where they are, right? Understand what their shopping habits are. But at this stage, I don't know if I'd say things have shifted because we're still so young that we're really just developing it. But we are building the business to be a big business, right? One of the things is we have a group of executives that come from very large brands, brands like Nordstrom and Lululemon. So we are here to create, billion-dollar businesses, which then will really rely on excellent sources of data in order to make that happen.
So speaking of some of those sort of like bigger heritage brands that you guys have a lot of people leading your company that have experience there, what are some of them that you've gotten inspiration from besides Lululemon, or are there other sort of emerging and new brands that you're looking to and kind of eyeing for inspiration, either when it comes to marketing or sort of like their brand ethos and voice? Are there any other brands out there that you're looking at?
Oh, I mean, I think so many. I mean, because we have taken this approach of looking at 4 different kinds of retailers, right? I mean, as I mentioned off the top, I really admire Glossier and how they really connect with their consumers, right? I really admire Allbirds and Patagonia and, Reformation and Mother of Pearl and the kinds of things that they do on the sustainability side, and, Pangaea, like their material science and what they're doing. So many on those levels. In the area of the more sort of iconic brands, I mean, I really admire Adidas and the work that they're doing, and Nike on sustainability. I mean, for them, they've done tremendous work. And then there's tiny little brands that are coming out doing really creative and exciting things. So we kind of look, we're major students. So we're always looking at what other people are doing. I mean, LVMH has, they've given up all their not given it up, but they're selling their dead stock as a source of fabrics for people to use. I really admire what the luxury brands are doing in that area. So, I think, especially in the world of sustainability, the beautiful thing about that is it's less competitive and more collaborative. we are always looking and standing on everybody else's shoulders in order to achieve the best. So I think, you know, the list goes on in terms of the brands that I really admire for the way they create a business model and for ultimately creating positive outcomes in the future. I think depending on what stage of business you're at, that's a harder lift for some than others. And we have the wonderful advantage of sort of creating it from the get-go.
I love that. What about from a more business development perspective? Are there any sort of like goals or initiatives you're looking at either this year or in the next, you know, decade even, that maybe it's other partnerships with co-branded partnerships or other vendors that you're looking to bring on? What are some of those goals that you're working on?
Yeah, so I mean, for right now, we're, you know, we've got a lot on our own with
like
our
everything.
We have a near-term goal of a third brand that we're going to launch, which we're super excited about, and we'll be launching in September. So watch for that. We also are looking to collaborate with other brands to not recreate the wheel, right? So circularity is a big discussion, right? So you make the product and then do you reuse it yourself? Do you put it into another organization that then upcycles? So we want to create those partnerships to not reinvent the wheel. I mean, when I was at Lululemon, my responsibility there was social sustainability in part, other things too. And I was always very conscious that it wasn't important for us to put our banner on what we were doing. So we created, for example, a program in Cambodia for young women. The issue there was literacy. So we created libraries with room to read. We could have gone out and created our own, but the goal was creating the library, and Room to Read knew how to do that. So why didn't we just work with them to do it? And we'll take the same approach here. If there's somebody out there that's really good at circularity, at repairing clothes, at whatever, let's partner with them. Let's get there together rather than saying, no, everything has got to fit under the house. So I think the idea of collaboration and how we get to the outcome that we want, which is, you know, a higher degree of sustainability, we're going to go that route rather than necessarily recreating the wheel ourselves. And that's the beautiful thing about sustainability is most of the businesses that are in this space really want to do that and achieve the right outcome.
I love that. And then to think a little bit about the future, I want to say like high fashion season or shopping season, specifically for fashion in Q4. What are some of the things that you're looking forward to as it relates to House of LR&C? But then also I want to say on a personal level, because the world is very much so back open in a lot of different places, at least here in the US. What are two things that you're looking forward to, work and personally?
Well, personally, I'm looking forward to getting back into some fashion moments, right? That I think will be really exciting, you know, getting out and connecting with people. We created our company virtually over this period of time, right? So really getting into spaces with people and in real life opportunities. And that relates to the business one, which is we're going to launch a really exciting brand in September. And I think I would buy absolutely every item in the lineup. It's apparel, accessories, and footwear. And I could empty my closet and refill it with this stuff. So really excited about that.
Oh, I'm excited. So we have more info, audience. It's September. That's when we need to look out for it. We have fashion, we have accessories. I'm ready for it. This was super exciting. Thank you so much for taking the time. We learned so much.
Great. Thanks, Tiffanie.
No problem.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tiffanie. Great moderation. And before I go forward, Therese, I must apologize. I did not introduce you correctly at the start of the session.
No problem.
But you are Therese, and you're not Nancy, who I know is watching today. So she's here in spirit, and that's what I was referring to. But I do apologize for that. You know, the one thing I took away from this conversation is, you know, you frequently hear that sustainability and profitability are mutually exclusive. Right? You hear this argument all the time. It's like, well, we're not a charity, and you know, we're not able to kind of make the business side of it work and still be able to do meaningful contributions to the environment, to, you know, to the world we live in, you know, and to be able to respect, you know, what we've been given. But you are an example of that clearly not being true. and staying true to your roots. And I mean, and that's something that we should all be celebrating. So thank you so much for bringing that message. And again, I'm in Toronto. I know Lululemon being a great Canadian brand, and I know it looks like you're in Canada as well, which is awesome. And you can't not be focused, on beauty and nature when you live in BC. So
absolutely.
Right, amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Awesome. Well, let's keep going on the rest of our programming for today. So we go from, really interesting conversation about sustainability, and I love this 3% of net revenue going to some really good sustainable causes. I mean, that's talking